Is your dog's food created to maximize your dog's quality of life or to extend the food's shelf life? It's time to make the switch to Sundays. Sundays was founded by a veterinarian and mom, Dr. Tori Waxman, who got tired of seeing so-called premium dog food full of fillers and synthetics. So she designed Sundays, air-dried real food made in a human-grade kitchen using the same ingredients and care you'd use to cook for yourself and your family. Every bite of Sundays is clean and made from real meat, fruits, and veggies, with no kibble. That means no weird ingredients you can't pronounce and no fillers. Because your dog deserves food made with care, not in the interest of cost-cutting. You just scoop and serve. No freezer, no thawing or prep, no mess. Just nutrient-rich, clean food that fuels their happiest, healthiest days. So you get more of them to share together. Go right now to sundaysfordogs.com/now30 and get 30% off your first 3 orders. Or you can use code NOW30 at checkout. That's 30% off your first order at sundaysfordogs.com/now30. Or use code NOW30 at checkout.
Are Democrats insane or just misunderstood? That's the topic of today's Bold and Blunt. And I'm your host, Cheryl Chumley, giving you a Christian conservative look at today's news, politics, culture, and events. I stumbled upon this very interesting poll that was conducted. It was a few years ago, but I think it still applies to today's political atmosphere. It was conducted at Penn State College of the Liberal Arts by the McCourtney Institute for Democracy. And the headline, it was conducted and published in 2018, but the headline goes like this: Americans not only divided, but baffled by what motivates their opponents. And it got me thinking, I wonder how true that is, because I think conservatives certainly are baffled by what passes for sanity in the Democrat Party these days. But I don't know if that's so much that it's, a misunderstanding as it is that Democrats are lunatics. And it's very difficult, if you're sane, to get in the mind of a true lunatic. Just look at what they're doing out in Minnesota right now, for instance. Defund ICE, defund police. That's the narrative. That's the narrative coming from within the ranks of the Democrat Party. And that's not to say that all Democrats support that idea, but it is to say that enough in the Democrat Party support it that it has the perception of being a Democrat Party talking point. You would never think that the Republican Party as a whole, as a platform, as even a fringe element of the Republican Party were to campaign on defund ICE, defund police. That is something that only comes from the left within the ranks of the Democrat Party. And if the Democrat Party does not support that, where are all the leaders in the Democrat Party coming out and saying, enough, that is not us, that is not what we want. We want ICE, just as we want police, just as we want law and order. But that doesn't really happen. And so you're left, as this headline says, baffled by what motivates. Before I get into more of this, I want to quickly mention, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network. That is RLN. That is the faith-based news outreach of Pastor Jack Hibbs's Calvary. Calvary, Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills Church in California. Boy, I hate that word. I hate saying that word. It's also the place where you go to get all your faith-based news, right? Because if you're really baffled by what the Democrats are doing these days, there's nothing like going to the Bible to get a good old-fashioned common sense understanding, truthful understanding of what's going on here. A battle of principalities, it's as simple as that, right? And RLN, Real Life Network, will give you those perspectives to help you make sense of the loons that are out there in the street. You may also get Bold and Blunt, of course, at WashingtonTimes.com, where scroll to the bottom of the WashingtonTimes.com page and find the newsletter section. Click on it, and you'll see the best of Cheryl Chumley's newsletter. If you sign up for that by entering your email address, you won't just get my Bold and Blunt podcast, but you will also get the commentaries that I write at Washington Times for your knowledge and awareness, so you can help fight off and make sense of the left-wing lunacy. So just go there, enter your email address. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday my newsletter comes out. Happy to have you aboard the subscription. You can also get Bold and Blunt wherever podcasts are available. All you have to do is go to a search engine and type in Bold and Blunt or Bold and Blunt with Cheryl Chumley, and all these different places that offer my podcast will pop up. All right. Americans, not only divided, but baffled by what motivates their opponents. I got to say, sometimes I'm baffled, and then what I have to do is remind myself that, okay, first off, these people are heavily medicated, right? And so that, they're raised on ADHD drugs, and then they go away to college and they chow down more ADHD drugs, and then they go out in the streets with their pink hair and 18 piercings and 74 tattoos and cat costumes, right? Meowing away, meow, 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 and getting upset because you won't recognize them as a cat. And not just a cat, but a cat that does not identify as male or female. And so I have to remind myself that these people aren't all there mentally anyhow, right? So that takes away some of the bafflement that I might feel about what's going on. But really, if you want a clear understanding of what's going on, like I said, read the Bible. There's nothing better to make sense of the evil in the streets today, the evil in our country, the evil around the world, than by reading the Bible and seeing how prophecy is being played out as we speak. But let's read a little bit from this McCourtney Institute for Democracy survey, because I find it very interesting and, as I said, still applicable. Republicans can't understand Democrats is the sub-headline. Only 1 in 4 Republican voters feel most or almost all Democratic voters sincerely believed they were voting in the best interests of the country. Rather, many Republicans say that Democrat voters were, quote, brainwashed by the propaganda of the mainstream media, end quote, or voting solely in their self-interest to preserve undeserved welfare and food stamp benefits. I think that's pretty fair. I think that's pretty fair to say. Most Republicans, this survey goes on to say, looking at the world through Democrat eyes, would say a 59-year-old Floridian Democrat, for example, I don't want to work and I want cradle-to-grave assistance. In other words, government is there to provide for all. That's how a lot of Republican voters tend to look at Democrat voters. Among the Republicans who seem to try hardest in this survey to take the perspective of sincere and patriotic Democrat voters, the most common attributions were related to immigration. As in one Republican woman from Washington who said, quote, Democrats welcome all people into the country, whether they are here legally or not, end quote. All right, again, I think that's fair summaries of what Republicans think of Democrats. All right, now, Democrats return the favor of criticism and say Republicans are uninformed or self-interested, the survey said. The Democrat voters in the sample said many of the same things about their Republican counterparts. For instance, Democrats said that Republicans must be, quote, very ill-informed, or end quote, or let me say that again, quote, very ill-informed, end quote, or that, quote, Fox News told me to vote for Republicans, end quote. What is it about Democrats and Fox News? My gosh. Fox News, don't they know that half of MAGA doesn't even like Fox News anymore? Talk about Newsmax, right? Newsmax is where it's at. Democrats think many Republicans are sincere and point to policy. Isn't that interesting? Democrats, this survey says, were somehow more generous in giving kudos to Republicans about their sincerity. That's because you can't fake sincerity. You can't fake being genuine. Democrats are more truthful in their assessment of Republicans because Republicans, this is me speaking now, not the survey, are genuine in their love for America, are genuine in their understanding of constitutional principles, are genuine in the belief that law and order are necessary attributes for a society to thrive and grow and prosper. So, of course, Democrats think Republicans are sincere because Republicans are sincere. So let me read just a little bit more from this survey, just a couple more bullet points. Taking the perspective of others proved to be really hard, the pollsters found. You think? I think it's almost impossible to get in the minds of Democrats unless you see that Democrats' designs, that Democrats' end games are to destroy America. Then and only then do their actions and their rhetoric and their narratives make sense to me. So let me see what the poll says here. And I'm reading this for the first time along with you. What an exciting journey, right? We're both finding this out at the same time. The divide in the United States is wide. And one indication of that is how difficult the question proved for many thoughtful citizens. A 77-year-old Republican woman from Pennsylvania was typical of the voters who struggled with this question, the question being taking the perspective of the other political party. And this woman said, quote, "This is really hard for me to even try to think like a devilcrat." I am sorry, but I, in all honesty, cannot answer this question. I cannot even wrap my mind around any reason they would be good for this country. Yeah, gotta say I agree with that assessment of this 77-year-old female Republican on her Democrat counterparts. Similarly, this poll writes, a 53-year-old Republican from Virginia said, quote, "I honestly cannot even pretend to be a Democrat and try to come up with anything positive at all, but I guess they would vote Democrat because they are illegal immigrants and they are promised many benefits to voting for that party. Also, just to follow what others are doing. And third would be just because they hate Trump so much." Yeah, I mean, honestly, isn't that why Democrats do what they do? Most of them hate Trump so much. Most of them are so interested in what government can give them. They care little about the long-term impact of their petulant, crying demands for entitlements. And others are just illegal, and they come to this country from socialist governments thinking that here in America, socialism should also be the order of the day. Democrats, here we go back to this polls. Democrats struggled just as much as Republicans. For instance, a 33-year-old woman from California said this: "I really am going to have to think a long time about this." And then she came up and said, "Republicans are morally right, as in values, that they're going to protect us from terrorists and immigrants and going to create jobs." All right. She gets that. She can put herself in Republicans' minds by thinking that Republicans really do want to protect the nation from terrorists and immigrants. And honestly, if Democrats could just come a little bit more on board with that, maybe we wouldn't have so much thuggery in the street, right? Maybe we wouldn't have so much violence coming from the left. Maybe we wouldn't have Democrat leadership standing quietly by as defund ICE activists go out and block ICE agents from doing their lawful duty. Maybe what we need is a little bit more understanding in this country, but it seems to me, even from the takeaways from this survey, that Republicans, as even Democrats, some Democrats recognize, are genuine in their beliefs and genuinely do want to see this nation succeed. And Democrats are sort of trying to tear this country down from the inside, and they know that. But they just can't help themselves. I don't know. That's my takeaway. Let's see what my guest today, what his takeaway might be from the state of U.S. politics and culture. He is a public relations expert, one of the best in the business, and he is an author with best-selling books and a new title to his name, The Curse of the Bearded Lady, How the Trans Mafia Whacked American Sanity, due out in July, due out this summer. AJ Rice, I want to thank you so much for being back on Bold and Blunt. It's so good to chat with you again.
Double C, it's great to be here. Happy New Year. Can I still say that, or is it, is there an expiration cutoff? I think Larry David told me, I think after the 8th, you have to stop saying it.
The 8th? Well, that seems sort of random. How about after January, right?
You get a week. You get a week. That's it. You get 7 days, and then the Happy New Year's have to stop.
That's right. And then we can start talking about your new book, right? Because that's coming out this year, The Curse of the Bearded Lady, How the Trans Mafia Whacked American Sanity.
Yes.
And speaking of whacking sanity, you and I both live in Virginia, and we've got this crazy new Democrat rule down in Richmond. What do you think is going to happen with transgenderism, just to start there?
Yeah, La Dame Blanche, the woman in white who was virtue signaling to all the suffragettes nationwide that have no idea who she is. Yeah, I mean, look, we got Abigail Spanberger, and I believe she's both of our former congresswoman, I think, in Virginia.
Yep.
And, deep stater, CIA girl. They tried to push her on us, claiming that she's a moderate, and she stood up to AOC and all the rest of it. But look, Virginia, unfortunately, is not the Virginia I moved to in 2004 and 5, where, George Allen and John Warner, right, Mr. Elizabeth Taylor, were the senators, and the governors were swinging all over the place. There were Democrat and Republican governors there for a little while. But with Glenn Youngkin, I mean, there hadn't been anyone since McDonald, who they threw in jail for asking the cook in the governor's mansion to make a birthday cake or something insane. And look, Spanberger's the governor. This lunatic, who Jay Jones is the attorney general. I'm sure they'll be suing the Trump administration any minute.
Yep.
This is the guy, ladies and gentlemen, that said that he wishes all of his political enemies died, and so he could pee on their grave of their children and all the rest of it. It seems like a nice guy to be the chief law enforcement officer in Virginia. Virginia's probably shot, and if it's not shot now, it'll be shot. And I was thinking about other states where this has happened. And, you look at Massachusetts, for example, another Commonwealth, and you've got, 47, 46% of the state, 48% of the state votes for Republicans in the general elections for president. And yet, because of the wacky governors and because of redistricting rules, by the wacky governors, of Massachusetts, they have basically made it impossible to have a federally elected Republican representative in the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So Virginia's heading in that direction. Spanberger has signaled she's open to, rejiggering all the districts in Virginia so that there's not one Republican representative going to Washington on behalf of the people of Appalachia, the people of the Piedmont, the people all the way out towards Blacksburg. They will, they'll basically shut their eyes with a magic marker and draw whatever district they have to do to make sure no Republican gets elected. And what does that look like? You get a little bit of Richmond. Now you get a little bit of crime in Richmond. And you get a little bit of crime. And you do. And you do. And you get a little bit of crime. You get little Guatemala. And you get little Afghanistan. And you get little Somalia. Right? And if they just, redistribute the brain-dead scum of Virginia across the state evenly with these districts, you got no Republicans left. And Virginia is, no different than Massachusetts or New Jersey or Rhode Island or Connecticut.
And we're going to feel an immediate effect because one of the first executive orders she signed was directing law enforcement to no longer work in cooperation with ICE, which is just a virtue signal to the nation's illegals. Come to Virginia. We are the new sanctuary state.
Yeah, and look, we weren't a nuisance. We've had a problem for some time in Virginia.
True.
MS-13 basically was running the show from Alexandria, Virginia, all the way to Leesburg, along Route 7. Years ago, some of our friends, Robert Spencer, Ken Timmerman, one of those guys, called Leesburg Pike, which is Route 7, the Wahhabi corridor. Because you had all of these Islamic groups, mosques there at Seven Corners outside of Arlington. Some of the 9/11 hijackers worked at the Kinko's. Remember Kinko's, guys? It's now called FedEx Office. Worked at the Kinko's there in Skyline, right where 395 comes in.
Right.
I know the Washington Times people know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
Right next to the Target that Michelle Obama used to go to seem normal. They worked there. 9/11 hijackers, right under our nose in Northern Virginia. And in other parts of Virginia, Joe Biden spent 4 years airdropping polio with a delivery system known as Afghan refugees, smallpox, polio, and all kinds of other things into Virginia. I know there's a really, really rural county, west of the Blue Ridge. I've got this great idea. It's 98% white. I got this great idea. Let's airdrop thousands of polio-infected Afghanis into that area. I was in, unfortunately, VCU hospital for a relative of mine last year. And I actually got to talk to ID, which is infectious disease, in VCU Hospital, VCU Children's Hospital in Richmond, Virginia. And he told me the whole story of the polio cases and where they were coming from.
What did he say?
And how demographically they showed up.
Right.
They didn't show up from a bunch of Irish Catholic nuns from, Maine or Pittsburgh. So that's what we're up against, ladies and gentlemen. It's not just crime. It's not just potential terrorism. It's infectious disease. And it's basically a way to break up our culture, turn us into Yugoslavia, right?
So Florida has a measles outbreak now, right? Did you read about that?
I've read that. Measles is a little different, the way it spreads. And polio, some of these things that are from the early 20th century,
right,
or further back. These terms like croup and dropsy, and why are they here? Why are they back? What are these things? So if you let the third world walk in, or swim in, or dare I say, get flown in by Kamala, drunk with an airline bottle, flying a plane full of Afghanis in here, they're going to bring third world problems. And that's really what this boils down to. And it's what all three of my books have been about. The Walking Dead is about this. The White Privilege album is about this. And Volume 3, which comes out this summer, is about this also. And it really boils down to culture and whether or not you believe all cultures are created equal. Are you excited that Uganda gave you the new mayor of New York City? Is that an exciting thing to you? So that's really what we have to debate. And it's something that Uncle Pat Buchanan and many others have been debating for decades. And obviously Trump has pushed it to the forefront. And now you have comedians debating it. You have everyone from a comedian podcaster to the dorky white paper writers out there who we need. We can't just have the comedians. We got to have them too. Every resistance revolution has to have, Thomas Jefferson, but they also need, Patrick Henry and Ethan Allen and Sam Adams. And the reality is that, are all civilizations created equal? Or are we special? Are we special?
So
is this why some civilizations vanish?
So how do you persuade the people out in Minnesota right now who are protesting against ICE conducting law and order sweeps in the street? How do you persuade them that America is special and needs to be defended against enemies, foreign and domestic? Because this is the enemy within. This is the group of people trying to destroy America from within.
Yeah, but I don't think the whole country, the whole state is Bolsheviks. I mean, the Minnesota Lakers, who became the Los Angeles Lakers, land of 1,000 lakes. I was going back and looking at, when we study election cycles, right? Pennsylvania, where I'm from, as I'm sure everyone can hear, I'm from Philadelphia. We always called it fool's gold, but it delivered Trump twice. Makes you wonder what happened in Act 2, right? Well, we don't have time for that today. Excuse me. I've been looking at numbers for years that Minnesota was close. It's close. There's always this last minute, maybe McCain can win it. Maybe George W. Bush can win it. Maybe Trump popped in there at the last minute, I think, in 2020. That's because the numbers there don't make sense. And we're finding out why they don't make sense. We're finding out who was voting. Captain Phillips's pirates have been voting, apparently. And when they're not electing Tampon Tim, they're electing Stuart Smalley, Jesse the Body Ventura, and all these other goofballs. But I don't think the majority of Minnesota is these wackos in the streets that you're seeing. The media amplifies them. You have an activist base. You have that anywhere. But I think they're outnumbered. And this should be the case study for all Republicans, any future Republican president. Look around at these supposed purplish blue leaning places, and Virginia might be one soon, and pop the lid of the can off. And unfortunately, it's gonna be painful. You have to turn these states inside out. You have to open the lid, dump it out on the floor. Let's see who's really electing all these wackos, Ilhan Omar and Keith Ellison. Let's see if they really outnumber the real voters. And look, you have to do that methodically. You have to do it politically, but you also have to do something, and this is why I write my books the way I do. You have to shame them. You have to mock them. Okay? Laughter is democratic. They don't like it. They don't like it when laughter is pointed upward at them or pointed at these protected groups inside their little woke force fields, Cheryl. But you have to do it. You have to use satire. You have to weaponize it. And look, it's a target-rich environment in Minnesota. From the governor to the goofy mayor that's, a little light in the loafers there, to the chief of police who didn't realize he had been conscripted into a civil war the other day. I mean, it's crazy.
It is crazy, and you do a really, in your books, especially, I'm sure this upcoming one, just the title of alone
Yeah.
is humorous. The Curse of the Bearded Lady, How the Trans Mafia Whacked American Sanity. But shaming is a great concept. But and just to finish up with this, because our time is already almost at an end, AJ, surprisingly. But how do you shame away someone like Mamdani, right? How do you shame the Democrat Party into stop moving socialist and communist and Marxist?
Well, comedy is not a party trick. It is a civic weapon. Okay? I don't care whether it's Ben Franklin making fun of George III or George Carlin. It doesn't matter. Right? Because jokes can topple reputations. They can shape public opinion. And they can make powerful, naked Marxists like Mamdani visibly sweat in public. Right? So that's what you have to do. You have to mock upward, name names, exaggerate mercilessly, offend on purpose, and never, 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 Cheryl, apologize. Go at them. This is why our late night hosts have become so stale, because they have patronage. It's not dangerous comedy. It's not dangerous laughter. Right? And that's it. It's our civic duty to mock these people. It's a component of democracy, right? That's what you have to do. You have to be loud, collective, shameless. Aim it directly at power. Aim it directly at the gatekeepers. Aim it directly at the, control oligarchs, to quote my friend's book. The people that are trying to follow you home and micromanage you to death. That's what you have to do. Blow it up. And the Republican Party was never really that great at it, but we've gotten better at it.
Yeah, we did have Ronald Reagan, who was very good at using humor to...
Well, you have the master right now in the White House.
Yeah, Trump is great.
You have Mr. Miyagi. You have Mr. Miyagi in the White House right now. Okay? Believe me.
He is great. He is a good example for using humor and snark and going right after the political enemies that way. AJ, it was great to chat with you. The Curse of the Bearded Lady, How the Trans Mafia Whacked American Sanity. It's available for pre-order right now, correct?
That's right. Get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Available for pre-order. White Privilege album just came out in paperback. You can grab that. We just had a White Privilege album Christmas. But this summer, the Bearded Lady, Cheryl, she's going to sing this summer. All right? The Bearded Lady sings.
Can't wait.
And, we're just in time for the midterms.
Can't wait, AJ. It was great chatting with you. Thank you so much for being on Bold and Blunt. Talk to you soon.
I love you, girl. Keep fighting out there.
All right. And that's the next Bold and Blunt. I want to thank you for listening and remind you, if you like Bold and Blunt, you may get Bold and Blunt at edify.app, at Real Life Network, at WashingtonTimes.com, and of course, wherever podcasts are available. Tune in next time. In the meanwhile, don't forget, stay blunt, stay bold.